Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. They always laughed at me. Every weekend, while they went to parties, I was out in the woods with my bow. While they scrolled through their phones or played video games, I practiced in silence, aiming, breathing, releasing. They called me old-fashioned, a wannabe medieval hero. My family thought archery was just a quirky hobby. Maybe it was. But when the world changed, when the screaming started and the sky seemed to split open, that quirky hobby saved my life. It all started on a gray morning. I live on the edge of town, in a small cabin my grandfather built. I never liked crowds. Noise gives me a headache. I teach archery at the local community center and guide a few hunting trips, but mostly I keep to myself. I was out back, splitting arrows into a straw target shaped like a torso, when I noticed something strange. Silence. The birds stopped singing. Now, that might not sound like much, but if you spend enough time outdoors, you notice when nature stops moving. The woods go quiet before storms or predators. I scanned the tree line, one hand on the grip of my recurve bow, the other hovering near my quiver. Then I heard it, a scream. It echoed down the valley, sharp, raw. Not a coyote or mountain lion. This was human. I froze. Another scream, then another. Something inside me stirred, something I hadn't felt in years. Not fear, something deeper, instinct. The same gut feeling I had when I was caught in that thunderstorm on the ridge or when that grizzly stepped out in front of my trail years ago. The feeling that tells you, move now, or don't move ever again. I dashed inside, locked the door, and grabbed my gear. Full quiver, backup strings, hunting knife, compass, canteen. First aid kit. My phone had no signal, not even one bar. That was another red flag. Then came the pounding. It started on the front porch. Someone, or something, slamming against the wooden boards like they didn't care about pain. I peeked through the front window. My neighbor Dan. Only, it wasn't Dan anymore. His face, it was pale, torn. His mouth hung open, drooling, something thick. His eyes were wide but blank, like he wasn't seeing the world at all. And his hands were bleeding, the knuckles raw from pounding on my door. I called out to him. He didn't speak, just threw himself harder against the door. I backed away. He kept ramming it like an animal. And then, I saw it. Behind him, stumbling down the gravel road, more figures. Some crawling, some limping. One had a broken arm twisted the wrong way, but it still moved forward, dragging its body like it didn't even notice. I didn't wait for them to reach me. I slipped out the back. The forest behind my cabin stretches for miles. Most people get lost in 10 minutes. I knew it like the back of my hand. I had hidden stashes, water, food, arrows. In case of emergencies, I never thought I'd use them for this. I heard the door shatter behind me as I vanished into the trees. The sound of breaking wood was followed by growling. Growling. From humans. I ran. Not full sprint. I didn't want to wear out. I moved fast but quiet. I knew how to make the ground work for me, how to leave no trail. Still, they followed. Not all of them, but some. I could hear the crunch of dry leaves behind me. When I reached the first ridge, I turned and climbed a rock formation I'd used as a lookout for years. From there, I could see my cabin. It was overrun. They tore through the place like wild animals, tossing furniture, smearing the walls. One of them even picked up my pillow and bit into it like it was food. It was clear. These weren't people anymore. And they were spreading. Smoke curled up from the town below. Faint flashes lit up the horizon. I spotted cars swerving off the roads and figures chasing people through parking lots. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was everywhere. I settled on the ridge and pulled out my binoculars, scanned the valley. I saw movement near the bridge. Someone running. A woman, maybe late 30s. Her clothes were torn and she limped. But she was alive. Behind her were 3 of them. Fast, clumsy, but gaining. Without thinking, I reached for my bow. One smooth motion, arrow on string, deep breath. Wind left to right, adjust, release. The arrow whistled through the air and slammed into the lead one's skull. He dropped like a sack of rocks. I knocked another arrow. Second one, same result. The third turned toward the sound, confused, but by then I had already drawn again. The final arrow hit center chest, not fatal, but it staggered him. That gave the woman time. She looked up at the ridge, saw me, and waved frantically. That was the first time I saved someone. It wouldn't be the last. I climbed down the ridge, carefully, quietly. The woman was waiting beneath a cedar tree, clutching a torn backpack to her chest. Her knee was bleeding, and her face was smeared with dirt, but her eyes were sharp. Alert, not infected, I could tell. "You okay?" I asked. She flinched at the sound of my voice. You shot them?" she stammered. I nodded. She looked behind her, then at my bow, then back to me. I thought we were alone. I shook my head. "We're not. They're everywhere." Her name was Dana. She was a nurse from town. She'd been working an early shift at the clinic when the first patient came in, coughing, shaking, confused. Moments later, he attacked another patient. Bit them. Then the others started turning. "It was like it spread through the air," she said. "But maybe it was the bites, or both. I don't know, it all happened so fast." I offered her a swig from my canteen and helped bandage her knee with a spare wrap from my pouch. She kept glancing at the tree line. "Do you think they can track us?" "I think they're drawn to sound," I said, "and movement." Her voice dropped to a whisper. I heard gunfire in town, but then it stopped. We both knew what that meant. I led her deeper into the forest, toward my first stash, a sealed ammo box I'd buried near an old oak tree. Inside were dry rations, water packs, flint, and a compact sleeping roll. I handed her a protein bar and took a sip from one of the bottles. We needed to move, but I couldn't leave her behind. And as much as I worked alone, something told me I'd survive longer with someone to watch my back. "I'm heading north," I said. "There's an old ranger tower about 5 miles out, high ground. Radio. Might still be working." Dana nodded. "I'm with you." The hike was slow. She limped, and I kept watch. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. Every snapped twig sent a bolt of adrenaline through my chest. But the bow kept me grounded. My fingers stayed on the string. Every few minutes I'd stop, listen, scan the brush, then move. At one point, we crossed an old fire road, and I saw the remains of a vehicle. An SUV smashed against a tree. The driver's door was open. Inside, dark stains covered the seats. No one was in sight, but the passenger window was cracked from the inside. We didn't linger. Near dusk, we reached the edge of a clearing and heard voices. Not growls, not shrieks, actual voices. I crouched low and motioned for Dana to stay hidden. I slipped through the brush and spotted them. 3 people, 2 men and a woman, gathered around a fire. They were armed, but sloppy. One of the men had a hunting rifle slung over his shoulder, barrel dragging in the dirt. The woman laughed too loudly. They didn't post a lookout. They hadn't seen what we had. I stepped out slowly, hands visible. Dana followed close behind. "Don't shoot," I said. All three spun around, startled. One raised a pistol, but lowered it when he saw we weren't infected. "Whoa, where'd you come from?" the man with the rifle asked. "Backwoods," I said. "We saw your fire." The woman squinted at me. "You're that guy. The archery guy, right? You used to run the range?" I nodded. She laughed. "Well, guess it's your time to shine." We sat with them a while. Their names were Trevor, Lacey, and Bo. They'd tried to escape town by car but hit traffic, then chaos. They bailed and ran into the woods. They had supplies, but no plan. "Figured the forest was safer than the streets," Trevor said, until we heard them. "They're moving fast," I said, "and spreading faster." "We saw a group earlier today," Bo muttered. "Dozens, just tearing through anything alive, animals too." That caught my attention. "Animals?" I asked. He nodded, shivering. "Yeah, coyote, maybe a dog. Didn't matter, they ripped it apart." So it wasn't just people. That made things worse, much worse. As night fell, we agreed to travel together. 5 heads were better than 1. I taught them how to move quieter, how to step on solid ground, not dry brush, how to stay low and use moonlight without giving away position. I gave Bo one of my backup knives. "Stick to the neck or eyes," I told him. "They don't feel pain." We moved under the stars. At one point, we passed a shallow stream, and Lacey stopped to drink. She cupped the water, trembling. That's when we heard the splash. Behind her, upstream, a shape rose out of the water, slow, silent, dripping with black algae and mud. Its jaw hung open, skin bloated. It moved faster than I expected. I didn't speak, didn't hesitate. Arrow on string, deep breath, release. It dropped into the stream with a splash. Lacey gasped, scrambling back. "What was that?" "One of them," I said. "They don't sleep, don't tire." Bo leaned over the edge of the stream and stared at the floating body. "They're everywhere, man," he whispered, "even here." I nodded grimly. "That's why we keep moving." The moon was high when we reached the base of the ridge where the ranger tower sat above the trees. I could see its silhouette against the sky. And something else, a movement. In the tower, a flicker of light. I wasn't sure yet if that was good news or a trap. We crouched behind a fallen log, staring up at the ranger tower. The light flickered again. A lantern or flashlight. Definitely not fire. Someone or something was up there. "Could be survivors," Dana whispered. "Or something waiting to draw us in," I muttered. Bo was already shifting nervously. "We came all this way. If someone's up there with a radio..." "I'll check it," I said. Alone. The others didn't argue. I was the quiet one, the one with the bow. I slung my pack, left my boots behind to stay silent, and moved barefoot through the brush. Pine needles didn't make a sound under me. I felt the wind on my cheek, kept low, kept breathing steady. The tower stairs creaked, but not much. Whoever was up there wasn't patrolling or making noise, just waiting. I reached the top, arrow drawn, heart pounding. The door was cracked open. I nudged it wider. The room was lit by a dim lantern sitting on a desk. On the floor, slumped against the wall, was a man in a ranger uniform. Pale. Still, eyes glassy, no movement. Dead? I stepped closer. Then, I saw the bandage on his neck, soaked through. Jaw clenched. He wasn't dead, not yet, but close. He opened his eyes. I didn't speak, just stared. He tried to raise a hand, failed. "Radio," he rasped. I scanned the room. Sure enough, there was a working radio set on the desk, its green light still pulsing. "Did you call anyone?" He gave a tiny nod. Who answered? His lips moved, one word. Base? Military? He gave the faintest nod again. Where? His eyes fluttered. I leaned closer. Bridge, he whispered. Old logging bridge, 6 miles north. Evac before dawn. Then he went still. I closed his eyes. Downstairs the others waited. I motioned them up one at a time. We gathered inside, bolting the hatch shut behind us. He's gone, I said. Dana knelt beside the ranger, checked his pulse, and nodded. Infection took him fast. He said something about an evac, I told them. Bridge, 6 miles north. Lacey exhaled sharply. 6 miles? That's nothing. We can do that. Trevor looked less convinced. What if it's already overrun? Then we don't have many other options, Dana said. We can't stay here. I tapped the radio. It still works. We might be able to get more info. I tried the frequency, crackling, then a voice. Repeat, evac teams will remain until 0600 hours. Approach from South Slope. If hostile, you will be turned away. It was real. We had a destination. A clock. I looked at my watch. It was just past midnight, 6 hours. But the tower wasn't as safe as I'd hoped. Around 1:30, Bo spotted movement below. Figures in the trees. We turned out the lantern. Shadows circled the base. Slow, patient. They didn't try the stairs, just loitered, like they were waiting for us to come down. I counted at least 8. We're boxed in, Lacey whispered. No, I said. We're on higher ground. I opened the trapdoor gently, keeping my steps quiet. 2 of them were directly below. I aimed through the railing slats and released. Thud. First one dropped. Second turned. I had another arrow ready. Thud. Down. The rest started looking up. We needed distraction, I whispered. Trevor dug into his pack, pulled out a flare. Wait for my signal, I said. I climbed halfway down the stairs, hugged the side, and waited. He lit the flare. It hissed, then blazed like a firework. He tossed it far, deep into the woods to the west. The creatures turned, all at once, drawn by light and maybe the heat. When they were far enough away, I slipped down the rest of the steps and signaled the others to follow. We moved like ghosts through the underbrush. No one spoke, no one stumbled. The flare had bought us minutes, that was all. We had 5 hours until dawn, and 6 miles of infected forest between us and that bridge. We stuck to the shadows, avoided trails, and crossed a ridge around 2 a.m. That's when we heard it. Screams. Human. From up ahead. I signaled for a stop. A small cabin sat near a bend in the trail, lights on, smoke curling from the chimney. From inside came desperate voices, arguing, panicking, and then the unmistakable crash of breaking glass. We didn't even get close before someone ran out the door, a boy, maybe 12, covered in blood, not his own. He didn't see us, just ran. Behind him came a figure, lumbering, rotting, covered in soot. Then another, and another. The cabin had been breached. We melted back into the trees, left them behind. Dana clenched her fists, shaking. We could have helped. No, I said, we would have died. The truth hit hard, but I didn't sugarcoat it. That's how people survived. By staying alive, even when it hurt. We kept moving. No one said another word for a long time. The moon had dropped behind the ridge and the forest was a thick wall of black. We navigated by instinct, following the slope, keeping north. Every sound felt louder now. Our breath, the rustle of pine needles, the occasional snap of a twig beneath our boots. I took point, bow drawn, eyes scanning. It felt like something was tracking us. by 3 a.m., our group was worn thin. Bo was limping, twisted his ankle somewhere along the ridge. Lacey kept glancing behind us, flinching at every gust of wind. And Trevor? He looked pale, sweating, but said nothing. "Stop," I whispered, raising a hand. Up ahead was a clearing. Faint light flickered between the trees, cold and artificial. A gas station. Out here? Maybe a hunter's rest stop or a seasonal post. But what mattered was the building. 4 walls, a roof, possibly supplies. I crept closer while the others stayed low in the brush. The station was mostly intact. The windows were boarded up from the inside, the door slightly ajar. Someone had fortified it. Recently. I peeked in. Shelves overturned, a few snack wrappers scattered on the floor. No sign of anyone living, but no sign of recent trouble either. I whistled softly, our signal. They joined me quickly. We slipped inside, closing the door and bracing it with a fallen shelf. For the first time in hours, we breathed. Bo slid to the floor and exhaled. 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. Dana nodded. "Let's regroup. Eat something." I dug through the remains of the snack aisle and found a half box of protein bars and a couple of bottles of water. We split them. It was quiet. Eerily so. I took a moment to check Trevor. His skin was clammy, and there was a dark stain under his jacket. "Let me see," I said quietly. He resisted, but I pulled his jacket aside. A deep gash down his side. Not from a bite. Looked like he'd fallen on something sharp. Still, it wasn't good. "How long have you had this?" "Since Tower," he mumbled. "Didn't want to slow us down." I looked at Dana. She gave a small shake of her head. Too deep, too late for proper care out here. Trevor leaned back against the counter. "I'll keep going. Don't worry about me." But I knew, we all did. Around 3:30 a.m., something banged against the side of the gas station. Everyone froze. Another thud, louder this time, then scratching. Multiple hands. They had followed us. I blew out the lantern and pointed to the back. Storage room, now. We barricaded ourselves inside a small storeroom with no windows. I knelt beside the door, arrow notched. The banging intensified. Wood cracked. They were inside. Dana gripped her crowbar. Bo grabbed a broken pipe. Lacey held a camping knife. We waited. One slow shuffle, then another. They moved through the aisles, knocking things down. It was like they were searching, listening. Then came a different sound. Trevor. His breathing had changed, more labored, heavier. He was leaning against the wall, eyes unfocused. I reached for him. "Stay with us." But his skin was ice cold. Dana whispered, "We have to go." "We can't," I said. "They're still out there." We heard a cough. "Trevor's, too loud." Something thudded against the storeroom door. Then another. We braced it. Lacey cried out as the hinges strained. They knew we were in here now. I looked at Trevor. His eyes were distant, barely responsive. He looked at me and whispered, "Buy you time." "No," I said. But he was already moving. He stood, steadier than I expected, and opened the door a crack. "Hey!" he shouted. Then he ran, out the door, out into the gas station. They followed him. Every one of them. The snarling, the footsteps, the crashing, then silence. I counted to 20. We slipped out, hearts pounding, and found the back exit. Trevor was gone. But we were alive. No one said a word. We pushed north again. The forest swallowed us back into its grip. The trail vanished under overgrowth and frost. Around 4:15 a.m., we found a creek and followed it. Its flow ran east, but curved back toward a logging road that would lead us to the bridge. We were close, but then we heard it, an engine. Low rumble, lights cutting through the trees ahead. I ducked behind a fallen trunk and raised a hand. Bo whispered, "Military?" The truck was armored, painted dark green. Tires caked in mud. A floodlight mounted on top. It pulled to a stop in the middle of the road. 2 figures stepped out. They wore helmets and gear. One carried a rifle. The other had a tablet. Dana stood slowly, hands raised. "Survivors!" she called. The figure with the tablet looked at her, then at us. "How many?" "4, I said. "We lost someone back there." He nodded. "Evac zone's a quarter-mile ahead, secondary bridge. You've got about 90 minutes before pullout." Then the other soldier asked, "Any of you injured?" I hesitated. "No bites. Check in with the medic when you reach the camp." Then they climbed back in and rolled away, tires spraying gravel. We exhaled. That's when Bo dropped to his knees, gripping his ankle again. "I can't run anymore." I knelt beside him. His leg was swelling badly. Dana looked at me. "We can carry him." Lacey shook her head. "Not at full speed." Bo looked up. "Leave me." "No," I said. "We move together." He tried to argue. I shook my head. "You slow down." We slow down, but no one's getting left behind. He blinked, then nodded. I pulled a rope from my pack and made a makeshift sling, looped around his shoulders so we could support him as we moved. Time was ticking, and somewhere behind us, I heard a low groan. Then another. They hadn't given up, and they were coming. The forest seemed narrower the closer we got to the evac zone. Trees leaned over us like they were listening, their branches brushing our backs as we passed. Bo's weight dragged us down. He wasn't heavy, but every step was slower, more labored. Dana took one side, I took the other, and Lacey walked ahead, eyes constantly scanning the path with her flashlight flicking on and off to conserve battery. We kept hearing things, snapping twigs, distant howls, moans that echoed and vanished like wind through broken glass. By 5 a.m., the air had changed, colder and sharper. The creek beside us grew wider and faster, rushing over stones in a steady rhythm. That's when we saw the flicker of red ahead. A glow, not from sunrise, from fire. We crested a low hill, and the second bridge came into view. It wasn't large, maybe 30 feet across, made of steel and wood, and it was burning. The far end had already collapsed into the creek, flames chewing through the support beams. A military truck sat halfway across, turned sideways, abandoned. Black smoke twisted into the night sky. For a moment, none of us moved. "They're still here," Dana whispered, pointing to movement on the left bank. "Soldiers. 4 of them." One waved us over. We hobbled toward them, Bo nearly falling twice, but we made it. They helped lift him and carried him to a spot behind a barricade of sandbags and stacked crates. This wasn't a base, just a temporary evac point. 2 tents, 1 radio post, and a helipad marked with a blinking beacon. "Where's the chopper?" I asked. The nearest soldier looked up. "Still en route. Should be wheels down in 15. Dana and I slumped against a crate. Lacey dropped beside Bo, who groaned but nodded. He was okay. Then the medic approached. "Anyone injured?" he asked. I started to say no, but Dana raised her hand. "Twisted ankle. He needs stabilizing." The medic got to work, wrapping Bo's leg and injecting him with something to dull the pain. I turned to a soldier nearby. "What happened to the bridge?" He didn't answer at first. Then, ambush. One of ours turned, bit 2. Firefight broke out, lost the driver. Truck caught fire, spread to the bridge. We barely held them off. I nodded. How many made it across? 10. You're number 11 through 14. Then the radio crackled. Chopper en route, ETA 10. Relief swept through our group like warm light, but I didn't let my guard down, not yet. Because something still didn't feel right. I walked to the edge of the camp, peered out into the trees. They were too quiet. Then I saw it. A silhouette 50 feet away, standing still. Then another. Dozens. Lurking just outside the reach of the firelight. I walked back to the group. We're surrounded, I said. Dana stood. How many? Too many to count. The soldier nearest us heard and turned to the radio operator. Tell command, we've got movement, dozens closing in. The operator responded, but I couldn't hear what he said. Bo sat upright. I can fight, just give me something. He was pale but alert. They handed him a short-range weapon. Dana grabbed a crowbar from the supply pile. Lacey armed herself with a hatchet. And I already had my bow. I never let it go. At 5:20 a.m., the sound came. That low, terrible groan rising like a tide. Then the forest exploded. They came all at once. Out of the trees, between rocks, down the trail behind us. Figures dragging limbs, eyes empty, arms outstretched. The soldiers opened fire. Flashes lit the night. I took position on top of the crate wall, my quiver slung across my back. Notched an arrow. First shot, clean hit to the eye. Second, through the mouth. I kept firing. One after another. Every arrow counted. Dana held the left flank, swinging with fierce precision. Lacey fought near Bo, guarding him with surprising skill. They broke through the first line of defense within minutes. Then the radio chirped again. Bird inbound, 30 seconds. The chopper's roar hit the treetops before we saw it, searchlight sweeping the woods. The landing gear touched down hard, blades chopping the air. The soldiers motioned us toward it, but the creatures were everywhere now, clawing over crates, climbing the sandbags. I fired 3 more arrows, then turned and ran. Bo was being helped by 2 soldiers. Dana pulled Lacey by the arm. We sprinted for the chopper. A creature lunged from the side, caught one of the soldiers. Screaming, gunfire, we didn't stop. I shoved Bo in, then Lacey, then Dana. I turned back and fired 2 arrows at the horde. One struck, one missed. Then I jumped. The door slammed shut. We lifted. Below us, the forest was crawling. The camp was lost. But we were rising, higher, into the air, into safety. For now. Inside the chopper, Bo clutched his leg, breathing hard. Lacey stared at nothing, her hands shaking. Dana gripped my arm and said, "We made it." I didn't respond, because when I looked down, I saw something in the trees. A figure, standing alone. Not a creature, a person, watching us, still, as if waiting. The chopper's engines roared louder than anything I'd ever heard. Vibrations traveled up my boots, through my spine, into my skull. The cabin was cold, despite the adrenaline still burning in my blood. I sat next to the window, watching the fire from the destroyed camp shrink into a dull ember far below. The treetops blurred into a dark ocean of green and black. Morning wasn't far now, just a hint of deep blue bleeding into the stars. Bo groaned, clutching his leg. Dana sat beside him, whispering steady reassurances, her arm braced protectively across his chest. Lacey sat across from me, her eyes locked on mine. "You saw that person too, didn't you?" she asked. I nodded slowly. Didn't look infected. Didn't move like one either, she muttered. Just watched. The pilot's voice crackled over the comms. ETA to safe zone. 20 minutes. Strap in and stay alert. A soldier beside him gave us a glance. We've had reports of infected getting creative, climbing fences, using tunnels. Nothing certain anymore. That didn't help. I looked down at my bow. The string was frayed. I'd loosed over 40 arrows in less than an hour. Some I wouldn't get back. Others were bent or broken. I'd have to remake my kit, rewrap my grip, reinforce the string before it snapped at the worst time. I need supplies, I said aloud, mostly to myself. You'll get 'em, Dana said, her voice tired but firm, after we land. But something in me didn't believe we'd get that far. 10 minutes later, the chopper shuddered. Hard. We jolted in our seats as the cabin tilted left. What was that? Lacey gasped. The pilot's voice was sharp now. Brace yourselves. We've got movement on the tail. Something's latched on. Impossible. We were hundreds of feet up. I unbuckled and moved to the rear, gripping the handle by the door. There, a thump, then another. Metal groaned under pressure. The soldier beside the door pulled it open just enough to peek. What he saw made him fall back. Something climbed up the landing strut. I stepped forward, bow in hand. Only one arrow ready. Open it, I told him. He hesitated. Open it now. He yanked the door fully open. Wind screamed through the cabin. And there it was. Clinging to the rear frame, just below the open ramp. An infected, wrapped in chains and harnesses. A jumper. Military gear twisted across its body like it had once been trained, armored. Its eyes were wide, but they were wrong. Empty. It snarled, one hand gripping the edge. I didn't think. I aimed, fired. Arrow hit between the eyes. It didn't scream, just let go. Vanished into the darkness. We slammed the door shut. The soldier locked it tight. What was that? I asked. Recon gone wrong, he muttered. We tried to train them. Use the infected for recon in contaminated zones. Remote control gear didn't work. Clearly. The chopper stabilized after that. I collapsed back into my seat. Lacey leaned her head back and closed her eyes. Dana whispered something to Bo. We all tried to breathe. When the city lights finally appeared, I expected relief. Instead, my stomach twisted. Smoke rose from two corners of the city. Fires flickered through streets. Buildings were dark. The safe zone perimeter glowed, but something about it felt brittle. The pilot circled once. This is it, he said. Landing at Sector 6. You'll be debriefed and directed from there. We touched down on a helipad surrounded by sandbag towers and floodlights. As soon as the blade slowed, medics and guards rushed in. Bo was lifted onto a stretcher. Dana followed. Lacey and I stepped onto solid ground, blinking under the floodlights. They checked our vitals, asked questions, logged names. Then they separated us. Lacey was sent down one hall. Dana and Bo were taken to the medical wing. I was told to follow an officer to the briefing room. Just routine, he said. I didn't like his tone. Inside, the room was bare. One table, two chairs, no windows. The officer sat across from me, pulled out a file, and opened it. Your name is Cal McAllister, correct? Yeah. You're listed as an archery instructor? Master Archer. Former wilderness survival coach. He nodded slowly, tapping his pen. You've had no formal combat training. Depends what you mean by formal. I've put more hours into bow and blade than most soldiers I've met. He smirked slightly. And yet, you made it farther than most. Through the woods. Across 2 infected zones. Held out until extraction. I stayed quiet. He leaned forward. We want you to stay. What? Join the civilian security teams. Help us map out the outer districts. Use your tracking skills. You'll be paid, fed, kept under protection. What about my friends? He paused. They'll be kept here, under medical observation. They won't be harmed. Won't be harmed wasn't the same as safe. I narrowed my eyes. Are they prisoners? Not at all, he said, but you should know. They may have been exposed. We're not taking chances. I stood. Then I'm not staying, not without them. He didn't move, just closed the file. You'll change your mind. I left the room without waiting for permission. Back in the main hallway, I tried to find someone who knew where they were holding Dana, Bo, or Lacey. Nobody gave me answers. Doors locked behind me. Alarms sounded in the distance. And that's when I realized this safe zone might not be safe at all. The walls were too clean, too quiet, too controlled. This wasn't a safe zone. It was a maze, designed to contain, not protect. I wandered the halls for nearly 10 minutes before I found a supply bay. A guard stood at the door, but his posture was relaxed. He didn't expect trouble. That made him vulnerable. I approached calmly, keeping my tone casual. They told me to grab my gear, I said, tapping the ID badge clipped to my jacket. It was fake, printed from a photo Dana had taken of an old operations tag, copied and slipped under plastic. I'd made it back at the camp just in case. The guard barely looked at it. Make it quick, he muttered, unlocking the door. I stepped inside, heart racing. Weapons lined the racks, mostly modern. Rifles, scopes, standard gear, but off to the side in a bin marked unassigned, I saw it. A longbow, recurve frame, fiberglass limbs, 40-pound draw, handmade. Beside it was a quiver with 15 arrows. Not mine, but close enough. I strapped it on. The weight felt right. I also grabbed a compact toolkit, a water canteen, and a radio headset. No firearm. I didn't trust anything I couldn't repair in the field. I slipped out fast before the guard noticed anything off. Next stop, the med wing. 2 floors down. The signs were subtle. Just a red cross over a white square. But I followed them through the sterile halls until I hit a locked security door. I waited, hidden behind a corner, until 2 technicians passed through. I slipped in behind them. The medical ward was lit in soft blue and white, quieter than the rest of the building. But that peace didn't last. I found Lacey first. She was sitting upright in a hospital bed, one arm bandaged, eyes sunken from lack of sleep. She looked up when I walked in and nearly jumped. Cal, how did you— No time, I said. Where's Dana, Bo? She motioned down the hall. They're in the isolation wing. They won't let me see them. Are they infected? They said it's just a precaution, but they're acting like it's more. We're getting them out. Lacey didn't hesitate. She stood, ripped the monitor pads from her arm, and grabbed the coat hanging on the back of the chair. We moved fast and quiet. I used the toolkit to bypass the panel on the isolation wing. Alarms didn't sound, which meant they didn't expect anyone with hands-on skills. First door, empty. Second, Dana. She stood when she saw us, blinking in disbelief. Cal, she breathed. You're how? Shh, I whispered. Where's Bo? She pointed to the next door. He's sedated. They gave him something to help him rest. I don't trust it. I nodded. Neither do I. I cracked open Bo's room and found him asleep, breathing steady, still alive. Lacey rushed to his side. I passed her the canteen. Wake him up, we're leaving. Dana helped me search the drawers. We found Bo's chart, no signs of exposure. Just heavy sedation. Nothing permanent. 15 minutes later, he was awake enough to stand, leaning on Lacey and Dana. I led the way. Back through the ward. Back through the maze. Until we reached a stairwell that led to the loading bays. I had seen it earlier, low security, one camera, easy blind spot. We made it halfway down when the intercom system buzzed. All personnel, report to main hall, security breach in Sector 3. That was us. They knew. I pushed faster. We burst out onto the loading dock just as a transport truck rumbled to life. No guards, no fences, just the open yard and a path into the darkened streets beyond. We made a run for it. I covered the rear, bow in hand, arrow nocked. Guards would come. I knew it. But the first threat wasn't human. We cleared the fence and reached a burned-out alley when the noise started. Low at first. Wet footsteps. Guttural breathing. Figures emerged from behind a collapsed wall, 3 of them. Faces slack, skin bruised and torn. Infected. How they got inside the zone, I didn't know. But it proved my point. This place was not secure. I fired. Arrow to the throat. Second arrow, miss. Third, eye socket. Lacey grabbed a crowbar from the street and swung at the last one as it lunged. It went down hard. She didn't stop until it stopped moving. Then we ran again. Bo stumbled. Dana caught him. I led them deeper into the ruins of the city. Somewhere out there, beyond the smoke and sirens, was a way out. I just had to find it. Because this outbreak, this wasn't just a breakdown of society. It was something deeper, something guided. I'd seen the infected think, climb, wait, watch. And now, I had a bad feeling they were doing more than that. They were organizing. And the first 12 hours? That was only the beginning. We moved through the wreckage of the outer city, ducking behind husks of cars and shattered storefronts. The distant hum of helicopters still circled above, but none came close enough to help. Too risky, too late. Bo was regaining strength. The medication had dulled his senses, but not his instincts. He clutched Dana's arm, walking with stiff legs, jaw tight. He didn't ask questions. None of them did. They trusted me to lead. I didn't feel like a leader. I felt like the last thread in a fraying net. We found shelter in the shell of an old bakery. The windows were broken. Flowers still coated the floor like ash. We pushed racks against the door and sat in silence, catching our breath, listening. The city sounded different now. Fewer alarms, more groaning, more movement. I adjusted the bow in my lap. Only 4 arrows left. "We can't stay here long," I said. Lacey nodded. "Where then?" "There's a rail line west of here. If we cut through the freight yard, we might find an engine still running, or at least a path out of the hot zone." "What if it's locked down?" Bo asked, voice hoarse. "Then we keep walking." No one argued. We rested for 10 more minutes before slipping back into the street. I led them south, sticking to alleys, trusting the map I'd memorized back at the bunker. Each step felt like walking a tightrope. Every sound could be a threat. 3 blocks in, we saw the first swarm. At least a dozen infected, crowded around a flipped ambulance. Some still wore the remains of paramedic uniforms. They were eating. I held up a hand. We crouched behind a broken wall. One wrong move, one sound, and we'd be surrounded. Dana pointed to the far side of the swarm. "That alley leads straight to the rail yard." I took a breath. "Wait here," I said. She grabbed my arm. "Cal, I'll draw them off. Loop around the block. Meet me at the gate." "Are you sure?" "No, but it's what we've got." I left my pack with her, just kept the bow and the 4 arrows. I circled wide, climbing onto a rusted fire escape, keeping low. I found a clear vantage point above the swarm. The infected didn't look up. They rarely did. I nocked an arrow, took aim, and fired. Not at them, but at a dumpster 20 yards away. The metal clanged loud in the stillness. Every infected head snapped toward it. They moved fast, too fast for comfort, and took the bait. I dropped down, landed on bent knees, and took off in the opposite direction. Ran 2 blocks, heart pounding, lungs burning. I met the others at the freight yard gate. Lacey had found a pair of bolt cutters in a nearby garage. She clipped chain just as I arrived. We slipped through. The yard was huge. Rows of rusted cars, engines, and storage containers stretched in every direction. And in the center, a small switch tower still lit. Power. We ran for it. I covered the rear, bow raised. Halfway there, the gate behind us rattled. They'd followed. Not many, but fast. I turned, aimed. First shot, hit. Second, missed. Third, stuck in the leg, slowed it down. Fourth arrow. I hesitated. One left. I waited for the right moment. A tall infected, missing most of its jaw, broke into a sprint straight at Dana. I stepped into its path and let the last arrow fly. Right through the skull. It collapsed mid-stride. I turned and ran. We slammed the switch tower door shut just as the rest reached the fence. Lacey jammed a pipe through the handle. It wouldn't hold forever. Inside, the control panel still glowed. Dana flipped switches, scanned gauges. "It's working," she said. "There's a backup engine on track 7. We followed the walkway out the back of the tower and climbed aboard an old freight engine, paint faded but lights on. Dana jumped in the cab and started pressing buttons. The engine groaned to life. The infected were at the fence now, some climbing. Bo swung a wrench at the manual release, dropping the rail clamp. We lurched forward. The engine rolled out of the yard, slow but steady. And then we were moving, out of the city, away from the fire, away from the screams. We didn't speak for a long time, just watched the world blur by. The sun was rising now, blood red through the haze. The first 12 hours were behind us. But this wasn't over. Not even close. This outbreak wasn't random. It had precision. It had reach. And something told me the real threat hadn't shown its face yet. I looked down at the bow in my lap. Only one arrow remained, a handmade one I'd stashed in my boot, my last shot. I smiled. I'd make it count. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.